Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
And now we have reached the portion of Liberty Nation Radio that you've all been waiting for. Well, some of you. I'm among them, because it's time to welcome back in our regular contributor, constitutional lawyer, and LibertyNation.com legal affairs editor, the man we like to call our guardian of individual liberty, Scott David Cosenza. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Tim, and thank you.
You're welcome. I think you enjoy that a little bit too much. Okay, now, Scott, the Democrats have introduced a police reform bill in the House. In its current form, it seems unlikely to pass. We'll talk about a couple of elements that Republicans and Democrats, omnibus reform, i.e. spending bill, in the House. But among the reforms that are in that bill is on something called qualified immunity. And you can clarify for us what that is and why it needs to be reformed.
Qualified immunity, simply stated, is how police officers can often avoid civil monetary damages if they violate somebody's rights in a court judgment. And what happened was there are laws that give people the ability to sue police officers or other public officials who violate the rights of the people. But the court has said that there's this immunity doctrine that they've applied in order to give relief to officials who inadvertently violate these rights. Now, the evolution of that law, Tim, in the last 40, 50 years has provided a situation where it's almost impossible to actually hold officials' feet to the fire and get them to be ruled liable because of the way the courts have carved out this immunity ruling. For instance, in New Mexico, we have a case where a motorist was driving down the road, suspected of having drugs, asked to give a consent search, and did. He let the cops search his car. They searched for over 2 hours, found nothing.
2 hours?
Yes.
Wow.
Deputy Javier Peru didn't give up on searching Mr. Timothy Young. As you might imagine, it's not a white-black dynamic we have here.
Right. It's a police-citizen dynamic.
It's a blue citizen dynamic.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And so he carted Mr. Young off to the hospital and ordered a doctor to x-ray him. No drugs were found. And then got a search warrant and told the doctor that the search warrant included his person and ordered the doctor to digitally examine Mr. Young. No drugs were found. So this is a guy, you think about the kind of day that Mr. Young has had, right? He sues, and the police were basically let off. They said, no, they have qualified immunity because lying to a doctor about whether you have a court's permission to digitally examine someone hadn't been an issue that that court had litigated yet.
Right.
And so under the qualified immunity doctrine, they were saying, well, they have qualified immunity, but going forward, new police encounters, they would know. Well, the court here has said, no, they're not going to grant qualified immunity in this case. But that's the kind of thing that people are fighting against. That said, these are all violations or court cases that happen after the violation of rights. So unfortunately, I don't think this is going to mean a sea change, even if it does pass, for how we're policed in the United States. But I think it is a reform that's worth undertaking in any case.
Of course, the Democrats control the House, so this is their bill. Republicans agree with them really so far on only a couple of items. One of them, the national ban on chokeholds. And last I looked, the pro-chokehold movement had not grown into something that's a thing yet.
Don't
Scott,
hold your breath for marchers in the streets.
I don't think so. I think that one will get through. The other one is for a national registry on police misconduct so that when a report of police conduct is filed, it will be part of a national registry, so it will be presumably available to the general public or at least to law enforcement officials at the federal level, Justice Department.
This is one of those things, Tim, where it has the capacity to really help, and also the capacity to be a nothing burger, depending on how they do it. One of the things that police officers are known for doing is resigning in lieu of undergoing discipline. So they perform some action at Department A, and they get in trouble for it or think they're going to get in trouble for it. And while that case is being heard through the often Byzantine disciplinary processes that the union contracts allow for, they simply quit. And therefore, they can apply for a new police officer job the next day. And so if this type of registry can stop that kind of going on, then I think it has the potential to make some real differences. We do have a problem where those rotten apples are not being weeded out like they should, and more and careful scrutiny of the licensed police officers, I think, is a good thing.
It wouldn't be bad, too, if the true whistleblower, there's another word that's been corrupted in the last couple of years, but the true police whistleblowers had a degree of protection that would allow them to come forward, because as we've talked about before, nobody knows a bad cop and can identify him better than a good cop. The problem is the culture surrounding it.
Absolutely right. We had a case that came out, I think, Fort Pierce, Florida this week, where a number of police officers were fired, and it was the case of a white man who was hurling racial epithets at a black female police officer. Her partner, a white man, beat the other white man. So it was blue standing up for blue, right? But he did so, of course, in violation of that person's rights. You're not allowed to beat somebody because they're saying something to your partner that you don't like. And there were lots of cops in that room, and none of them did anything about it when it was happening. So,
you know, Scott, we've been inundated with images of George Floyd and that 8 minutes and 46 seconds of video. People see a black man with a cop with his knee on his neck. You know what I see? I see a citizen with a cop with his knee on his neck. And that's why white people, broadly speaking, are just as outraged about that incident, because they don't see a black or white person. They see a citizen.
Well, not only that, Tim, there are far more white people in this country than black people, and we need a fix with the police too. It's not okay if they just change things the way police deal with black people. Police need to respect the rights of all people. This
whole Chauvin incident to me was more of a power assertion than anything else. Now, but the cause of those who've been defending the cops was not helped, Scott, when videos came out of cops slashing tires at protests in Minneapolis.
I mean, I think the week has been full, Tim, of everybody giving plenty of bad examples for the worst fears that people have of them, police included. And this so the Minneapolis State Police just slashed dozens and dozens of cars' tires, and I don't mean one tire on a car, all 4 tires on the cars that they slashed. They said, in response to questions about why they did so, that they only did it to cars that they feared would be used as weapons because they had bricks or other things inside them. But then it was later learned that nationally known reporters' cars that were rent-a-cars that had nothing at all inside them, they all had these 4 tires slashed. There's plenty of video out them with the cops just slashing tires. And the victims of this thought it was the rioter Antifa types, as you might imagine. And then only later, days later, the video comes out that shows these cops doing it. And it's just, another black eye.
This is what we're talking about, the culture surrounding police departments, not individual cops so much as a culture that would allow stuff like this to happen, which is not obviously as outrageous as taking the life of a man by kneeling on his neck, but it's another example of the culture that needs to be reined in. So I think everybody agrees there's going to be reforms. It's just a matter of to what degree and when. Well, thank you, Scott.
Thank you.